Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, everybody. I am proud to be an Australian standing for the spirit of this country, for democracy, for religious freedom, for the ability to say without being imprisoned, I love my country and want its freedom. These are all rights denied to the Tibetan people in their own homeland. On Monday, the motion was passed calling for access to Tibet and human rights. Yesterday, the Senate passed a motion supported by both the government and the opposition for China to engage in urgent discussions with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. But today, a motion calling for the United Nations top-level investigation to go to Tibet was voted down by both parties. And tomorrow I have a motion before the Senate calling for the end of the death penalty in China. And I put that motion there because that again is anathema to us Australians, and it is something we must fight against because we know it is used not just against people who commit what we consider crimes, but against people who stand up for their country. And I can only think of the terror in the hearts of people who are in Tibet, who love their country. This is a country where the military occupation by the communist regime in Beijing has brought great cruelty, great repression, and great terror now for these last 60 years. And I can only imagine the anguish in the heart of the Dalai Lama, who I know well, and who we recently welcomed to our parliament, that he is so vilified by the liars and those people who occupy the offices of power in Beijing. I don't think they represent the Chinese people. I think they represent their own power and their own ability to ruthlessly keep down the spirit of democracy and religious freedom wherever it might be. And we are obliged to speak up for those rights. However, we know for Tibetans, if you speak up of love for your country, you are vilified by Beijing as splittists. If you speak up for human rights and religious freedoms, you are called criminals. If you speak up against injustice and poverty in your country, you are vilified as being lawbreakers. The lawbreakers and the villains here is this military dictatorship from Beijing. It is high time the Tibetan people had their day in the sun. Why should they not have the right to their own expression of how they want their country to be? And I think I represent the great feeling of Australians right across this country in supporting Tibet and its struggle for freedom and the agony that it has been through again in these last 2 weeks. People who have been shot, people who are now facing torture, people who have been deprived of their rights simply speaking up for the freedoms that we take for granted. I want to say that the Olympic torch will be coming through this great city on the 24th of April. It is an opportunity again to peacefully express feeling about that torch being carried high, not just for the wonders of we human beings and our athletic prowess, but for our thirst and love for liberty and democracy and religious freedom. That's what that torch represents. It does not represent repression and terror and military occupation of a free, what should be a free people. The torch is going on to Lhasa on the 21st and 22nd of June. And then on the ascent of Chomolungma, the Mount Everest, as we know it in the West. This is the opportunity in the coming month to peacefully protest again our solidarity with the people of Tibet against the repression that has been levied on the country of Tibet. Now, I have been asked frequently in the last few days, will you support a boycott of the Olympics? And my answer to that is, let us do what Prime Minister Rudd called for in Burma last year first. That is targeted sanctions on those people in office in Beijing, including Hu Jintao, who put his boot down on Lhasa in 1988-89. Let us have a globally coordinated effort to condemn China, the Chinese authorities, for what they are doing in Tibet. Let me finally say that parliamentarians will be meeting again tomorrow in the Parliament on the Hill from across the parties to see what can be done for Tibet. I, for one, and I know I'm with millions of other Australians, will never, ever back away from the right of Tibet to all the rights that we enjoy here in Australia, and for the need to tell the dictatorship in Beijing that it is wrong and that it should give the freedoms to the Tibetans, including the return home of the Dalai Lama to Tibet, so important to the people of Tibet, and do it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Brown. We really appreciate all the support that you have lent towards Tibet. We hope that in the future there will be many more like you to stand up for Tibet, and so that the voice of the Tibetan people in Tibet will be heard around the world. Thank you very much, Senator Brown.